Hey everyone, welcome back to the 7th round of the Portugal's Masters 2021. This round I was paired against Luís Reis, who is rated 2157. And the last round I lost, round 6. So let's see how this game went. I was hungry to, well, first of all to win, but also I felt like I needed to change something. So I decided to mix it up, and for the first time in my life I played 1d4. That's right. I sort of grouped up with the old masters. Maybe Karpov is the first name I think of when I think of D4. Maybe Kramnik. Um, and he played knight f6, knight f3, and I sort of knew he would play c5. He had played it earlier in the tournament. And he's overall a very dynamic player. So c5 is a little bit of a gambit, not really classified as a gambit, but okay, it's a very sharp line. Most popular here is d5, grabbing space, but I played c4. Because I really wanted to take the game to positional grounds, where I felt I was more comfortable. He traded, he traded, and went e5. And after knight b5, he played d5. So I'm smiling because it's funny how I played d4. I try to sort of cool him a little bit and play a slow game, and he still managed to get a dynamic and sharp position. This is a gambit because I took, and now it's really gambit, not a semi gambit or something, because well he can't take back because I actually take that knight on d5. Quite a nice little double checkaroo, and that would net me a piece. So the idea of this is purely to play for a compensation. So bishop c5, and it's an interesting gambit. I had never seen it before, but now that I've analyzed it, I know that hundreds of games, to my surprise, have been played this at the top level actually, which is interesting because basically the elite players in this world have refuted almost a lot of gambits. Okay, knight 5 to c3. You might be wondering, well, why not develop a new piece? This would come at a very high price because if a6, let me mark this as a mistake, because after a6, I would have to go back, and then there's b5, and he's threatening this fork immediately, and black is already better, much better. So knight 5 to c3 is the move. And white is going to have to invest a lot of time. There's a lot of options here for black. But white is going to have to invest a lot of time into actually consolidating the position, because after this last move e4, what this does is two things. First of all, it vacates the e5 square for a black piece, namely a knight. Would really love to get there. And second, it's cutting off the possibility for me to defend my pawn with another pawn. So it's quite unclear actually whether I can maintain this extra pawn on d5 or not. I played knight d2. He goes bishop f5. I played a3. Knight d7, b4. So for the moment, I'm delaying the kingside development quite a bit. Knight c4, and yeah, I'm gaining some time, right? He plays bishop b8, which is not the best move. Better was knight e5. But I felt like this was comfortable for me after I traded, went queen d4. My queen is very nicely centralized after rook f8, for example, bishop b2, rook c8, bishop. Actually, yeah, this is a funny line to showcase. Bishop b2 is just a slight inaccuracy, because after bishop g4, you see the problem is white cannot trade the bishops because this knight would be able to land on d3 with a devastating check. And how do I decline the trade, right? If bishop b5, he can go bishop d7, and this would be a very funny draw. But this is just to showcase that knight e5 was an option. He played bishop b8, which I thought was more normal. But I returned the favor right back with queen d4, which in this case is not the best move. Not that it's a terrible move. Better was just bishop b2. Because after queen d4, you see he plays a6. And he can go bishop a7 and evict my queen. By the way, the idea was to prevent knight e5. The idea of queen d4. So a6, bishop b2, bishop a7, queen goes back. Knight b6, and here is a very curious moment. Stockfish suggests d6, and it shows, obviously, it's right, and it shows that white can maintain this pawn on d6. It's not falling. Well, even if I were to play the game again under the same circumstances, I don't think I would play d6. It's hard to foresee that white can maintain the pawn. Basically, after rook c8, knight e5, queen d7, bishop e2, and okay, black will eventually double. And you know, in the in a faraway future, white actually does give the pawn back because there's all sorts of compensation since black took so much time to take this pawn on d6, and he's all entangled. So yeah, d6 would have been apparently the best move. Not a very practical move though. I traded on b6, which I marked as inaccurate, but white still has a nice advantage here. Bishop c4, rook d8, h3. The idea is to go g4 simply, because after g4 I'm threatening g5. Let's just make a sample line, king h8. G4, he goes back, I can go g5, he goes somewhere, and eventually I can go h4, and start actually straight up just a kingside attack. I don't really have to castle, because the center is closed for the moment, and I have a lot of pieces around my king, so this would be interesting, but he played h5. Now I went knight e2, maneuvering the knight, queen d6, rook d1, rook c8, bishop b3, h4, so clamping down a little bit here, not allowing me to, well, maybe not allowing me to push g4. I played bishop d4 here. At this stage, I wasn't so sure what I would do, because you see, if I castle, which would be maybe the ideal move, you can go bishop b8, which is a sneaky move, and how do I stop mate here? I don't think it's so simple. So yeah, I played bishop d4, and I really wanted to trade these bishops. Now he had two ways to play here. One is bishop b8, which maybe looks most natural, and I would probably go queen b2, aligning some pressure here. And since I'm not castled, I'm also not so sure what black does, and I am a pawn up. So if anyone is better, I think it's white. Bishop takes d4 would have been maybe interesting, because after queen takes, knight d7, and this maneuver here to d3 is now unstoppable. So like castles here, rook c1 here, and rook c3. And I thought this was very decent for black, right? I mean, his knight is, as we call it around the business, an octopus knight, and yeah, black has some compensation. But white is still slightly better. Now the move that was played in the game was not so great, which was b6. Basically, this bishop is just way too passive now. I followed my plan, queen b2. He goes knight h5, maybe afraid that I would take on f6. I go bishop e5, which is good because, well, basically, when you have a passed pawn, a rule that's often applied is that the opposing side to the passed pawn, or the isolated pawn, wants to blockade it. So right now I'm removing the blockade, right? So after queen g6, well, if this pawn weren't under fire, I could go d6. But in this case, I had to defend the pawn, and also I had a different idea in mind. After rook g1, it's actually going to be showcased after bishop b8. I traded, which was slightly imprecise. Better was the move that I'm about to show after queen e5. Rook c8 was the final mistake, and here went g4. This one just goes, and it goes all the way through. It's a fork. Now, if you are an r/anarchy chess user, then you know that this pawn must be taken. But I just stay with the knight, and the problem is, you see, there's gonna be mate here, and this is also like a fork. So if he takes, I just take back, and now he's got to protect the bishop and the pawn. Queen h7 is the only move, but then d6, this one just goes as well, and this one opens up. It's it's quite visual that black is just completely squelched here. If not, knight takes h3. Okay, he played actually bishop takes h3 in the game, but here comes just queen takes h5. And I just win a piece, and also have a crushing attack, so this was just over. A couple of moves ago, his last try was rook e8, because then he could go queen d6 again. But this is still great for me. In g4, we trade, and white is still much better. But yeah, the game ended on move 30, quite aesthetic, with queen takes h5. And I got a chance to bounce back, right? After losing in game 6, I won in game 7. And stay tuned for the next video to see how game 8 went against a FIDE master, fellow colleague of mine of my age, José Francisco Veiga. So, peace out, and I'll see you next video.